And this is the thing. Just because you're a sick person at one point, it doesn't mean that you are a leper.
No.
You know, you come through these things.
This is a very good point you raised there, because this is the thing I'm trying to get across. I've got a lot of things I'm trying to get across when I talk about mental illness and recovery. See, there's a lot of conversations that are had, and recovery's not even mentioned when it comes to mental illness. You know, you're in that pigeonhole, you're in that box. Yep. You're bipolar, you're depressed, you're you're anxious, you've got panic disorders, you've got OCD, you've got any number of different labels.
That's your label.
Straight in the box.
Yep.
Very rarely do we hear the word recovery mentioned when it comes to any of those things. Recovery happens every day. People recover. They manage their lives. They don't have an onset of symptoms again. They get on with their lives, and that's great, and that's possible, and it happens far more than many people realise, and so people need to hear that story.
Because we only hear the really negative stories. We only hear when mental illness takes a life.
Yeah.
We don't hear when mental illness is put into remission, so to speak.
Yeah.
And as we said with the police being involved, and having those people involved in a certain situation like you were in, you see so many people who haven't been lucky like you to be picked up and taken to the place they need to be. The homeless population.
Absolutely.
How many people do you see out homeless who are talking to themselves? They're in a whole different realm.
Yeah.
Because they're mentally ill. You see them everywhere. I was just in Darwin, and the mentally ill people up there that I saw was incredible. So many people who haven't got the help they need, and they don't have the infrastructure put in place to get that help in the foreseeable future, not just now. Like, I can't see that happening at any point up there.
I remember a few years after I'd been discharged from hospital and I was diagnosed with bipolar 1 disorder. I was stabilised with medication. It's medication I still take today. My health today is as good as it's ever been. I feel better today at 56 than I did when I was 36. I look after myself. My life's changed a lot in the choices I make. 2 years after I was hospitalised, I was working in Sydney reasonably regularly on weekends, broadcasting rugby league. And you'd go for a walk down George Street, and I used to go down to the Rocks. That would be my walk, and I'd go down to the Rocks and I'd have breakfast and coffee down there. And I would see a lot of homeless people. And I would see a lot of people who were, they were lying on cardboard boxes, and if they were lucky, they'd have a sleeping bag, and some would have a blanket or a pillow, and they might have a tin in front of them. I am homeless, if you can spare a few coins. And, as you say, some would be sitting there and they'd be talking to themselves, clearly mentally ill. And I had an epiphany, if you like, on one of those Saturdays. And I thought, there's Craig Hamilton right there. If he doesn't have a family, if he doesn't have a job, if he can't afford medication, and if he has no friends, there's me. And that's the truth. That's what happens. That cycle, once you get to experience the sort of episode that I had, and it was serious stuff. Serious stuff. It's like now, when I talk about it, it's like it happened to someone else.
Yeah.
Right? Because I can speak very openly and comfortably about it because I've got past all that bullshit of shame and stigma. But if you get to that, if you don't have that safety net underneath you, which the people who can pick you up, that can get Humpty Dumpty and put him back together again, then the family's gone, the job's gone. How are you going to hold down a job when you come out of a psych ward diagnosed with a psychotic illness? So you haven't got a job. Highly unlikely you're going to get another one. So then you have to have medication, and medication's not cheap, right? You also can't afford a psychologist, let alone a psychiatrist. So what happens?
You end up there.
And our public health system, particularly in the mental health area, is a disgrace.
Absolutely.
It's a debacle. It's a cot case. The system is a cot case. When you have people who are presenting at hospitals, at public hospitals, with mental health problems, and they're saying, give me a bed. I've got a mental health problem. They're saying, oh, look, we don't have any beds. We don't have any room for you. They're out. They've tried. They've made the effort. They know they've got a fair idea in many cases that they're not well. But you know,
how many knockbacks are you going to take before you give up trying to get help?
How many knockbacks are you going to take before you? And then is suicide the
easy option than dealing with this shit.
It's a hard option.
Hard option, no doubt.
Hard option.
But rather than dealing with the people that keep knocking you back and telling you you're not healthy, or there's nothing wrong with you, or any of that type of shit. And in your own mind, and I'm someone who's also gone through these thoughts that are terrifying. And you think to yourself, I'm going crazy.
Yeah.
This is mad. This isn't me. And logical me is like, no, this is terrible. And I can only imagine what someone in a deplorable situation, like someone out on the street, is thinking on a daily basis. No wonder that the suicide rate is where it is when they can't get a bed.
You break your leg, right? Or you or I are involved in a car accident at some stage today, and we get smashed up, okay? And we have multiple broken limbs. And we head up to hospital, to one of the public hospitals. Mate, we're straight in. We're straight through emergency. We're straight into a whatever the level of our injuries are. We might be straight into an x-ray to find out what's busted, anything critical, is there any bleeding? Let's do some, it's doing a bit of patching up here, any organ damage. It's just done. It's accepted as the norm. Yet you got someone, and that's, you or I might be critically ill, yet someone who's in the same position, who has a mental health problem, who's mentally ill, is just as vulnerable as you and I are in our car accident. That's life-threatening as well. Are they getting the same treatment? No, they're not. It's not a level playing field, and that's got to change. And I think that those at the top of the tree don't get it. And I'll put an exception in there. Greg Hunt, who is the federal health minister, he gets it. You know why he gets it? Because he grew up in a family with a family member who was mentally ill, and I think it was his mum. So he's made that his mission, if you like. He's going to drive change. He gets it because he's seen it. But there's so many who just don't get it.
From my own experience, and I won't mention names or anything like that for privacy reasons for the individual, but there was someone who went, a job I was working, and this young man, he would have been about 27, 28, he continually went to a public hospital asking to be put in, to be admitted. Because he was recovering from a certain mental illness, and he started doing drugs again. Yeah. And he was becoming increasingly aggressive. He was becoming increasingly depressed. And at one point, after about 4 or 5 weeks of constantly being knocked back, sent home, going up in ambulances, that was the point he got to. It's like calling the ambulance because he was like, I will get in if I go up in an ambulance. The ambulance knocks him back. He gets to the point where I turn up at his house one day, and he is yelling, throwing things, trying to fight his mum, all these crazy things, punching glass, having a drug-induced psychotic event. And that was the only reason that he got admitted. Yeah. Because he was threatening other people's lives. Yeah. Like that's something that could have been intervened if public hospitals had the infrastructure in place many weeks earlier. Yeah. And we wouldn't have got to that point where somebody could have been injured, killed, or scarred for life. Yeah. And it's just a terrifying thing to think, even back to the point about the homeless people, that could have been you. I felt when I was increasingly at my peak, and my anxiety was increasing, and I was at my peak of my issue, that I was going to be that person homeless. Because as you said, if I didn't have a family, if I didn't have friends, if I didn't have people who were supporting me, if I didn't go and support myself with my doctor and my psychologist, then I very much could have been one of those people that either ended up dead or fought that hard battle of your own mind on a daily basis.